everyone, it's Nina and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a check-in for my low buy year. Basically, my goal for this year is to spend less money on books overall, and I have a book budget of $240 that I have to spend throughout the entirety of 2025. I'm going to jump right in talking about what this is and why I'm doing this. The big reasons for why I decided to do this was one, financial. Just in general, when looking back on the records I kept for how much money I spent on books in 2024, it was a lot more than I thought it was. And I just kind of felt that I was spending more money on books than I really needed to be, based on my track record with like how much books from my own library I actually read, how often I would listen to audiobooks or get physical books from the library. And for all those reasons, I decided to set a much smaller total amount I was going to be able to spend in 2025. The other reason is something I have mentioned on my channel, and that's the fact that I do not have a lot of storage. I live in a one-bedroom apartment, and all of the books that I own are kind of spread out over different bookshelves that basically equate to the size of probably one full-size Billy bookshelf. One of the bookshelves I have is this like half-size one over here, and then I also have another like half-size height-wise and half-size width-wise Billy bookshelf in my kind of reading nook area near my kitchen. And overall, my storage for books is pretty much always at full capacity. So I really wanted to cut down the amount of books I was bringing into my home, not just for financial reasons, but also for storage reasons. I decided I didn't want to go completely cold turkey and do a full book buying ban. Instead, I have a book budget of $240 for the entire year, which if you do the math, equates out to one new adult paperback release a month. Most adult paperbacks are between $18 and $19, and then after tax, it becomes $20. So $20 times 12 months gives you $240. So that's how I got to the total for my book budget. So now we are going to go month by month and talk about all the books I've bought so far in the first 3 months of the year. So starting off in January, I bought 4 books. The very first book I bought this year was The Scottish Boy by Alex de Campi. This was an adult paperback I got from Blackwell's, so it was, I think, around $15-17. I started reading this book initially in audiobook format through Spotify, since I had a free credit of the Spotify premium that has audiobooks, but I ended up losing access before I could finish when my month ran out, and I do not like spending money on a Spotify premium. So I decided, since I was really enjoying this book, I would go ahead and pick up a copy of it, since I knew I would want to own it and probably read it again in the future. The next book I bought was Onyx Storm. I had bought the ebook of this through the Kobo store, which was $15.83. I'm not actually 100% sure on the price, because it has actually fluctuated a little bit since when I got it. I'm pretty sure 2 weeks after the book originally came out, it was on a special sale through the Kobo store for $7, but I'm pretty sure when I bought it on release, it was around $15 or $16. And the last books I bought in January were 2 ones I got used. I got these at the same thrift store on the same trip, and that was The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, as well as A Touch of Jen by Beth Morgan. And these books, secondhand, were both $1.50 each. So my total for January was $34. In February, I bought 2 books. I also got these both on the same trip at a combination new and used bookstore in Philadelphia called Giovanni's Room that specializes primarily in queer literature. Both these books are ones I was very excited to find and very happy to have in my collection. The first one is Dark Air by C.S. Pacat. This is the sequel to Dark Rise. And the other book I picked up was The Hourglass Throne by Katie Edwards. I'm not exactly sure the split between the two of these, but in total this trip was $26.99. This book new is $21.99. The price on the back of this says $9.99, but I'm pretty sure it was half off because it already was a used book, and then I think it had been sitting in the used section for over a year, so they discounted it even further, which is definitely a steal because I'm pretty sure this book new is around $20. Okay, and lastly, let's talk about the books I got in March. In March, I got 2 books. The first one I got used, and that was a copy of If We Were Villains by Emma Rio. This is the UK edition of the book, and if you've watched my channel before, I'm pretty sure I showed in a book haul during the end of 2024 that I had hauled the US paperback edition of this book, also from the same thrift store. But this is actually the cover and edition I prefer. So when I saw this for $1, I had to pick it up. And I'm pretty sure I'm just going to stick the US version that I had previously thrifted in a little free library in my area. Very excited to have this in my collection. And the other book I bought in March was Gods and Monsters by Shelby Mahurin. This is the third and final book in the Serpent and Dove trilogy. and I really wanted to pick this up because I had recently read the second book in the series and wanted to continue on. And I ended up picking this up from Barnes & Noble, and I had like one of their rewards credits for $5. So this ended up being $13.80. It wasn't a full $5 off because I also had bought some DVDs with my wife during the same transaction, so it kind of like got spread across all the things in my order, but still got it for less than the list price, which is $15.99. So then my total for March was $14.80. I also wanted to mention 2 of the pre-orders I've gotten this year, since in my mind, even though Barnes & Noble does it so that the transaction doesn't happen until the book releases, in my mind and also in my budgeting, these books were ones I like paid for in 2024 when I decided to pre-order them. So I don't consider them part of this budget. Maybe that's technically cheating since I did technically pay for them in 2025. But again, mentally, I was prepared to put the money down to buy them in 2024. So I consider them more of a 2024 purchase than a 2025 one. Anyway, the 2 books that I got, the first one was You Didn't Hear This From Me by Kelsey McKinney. This is a nonfiction book. And honestly, I do not remember how much the pre-order price was because I'm pretty sure I also got this and the other one during one of the Barnes & Noble, either like 20% or 25% off pre-order sale, which is another reason why I decided to buy them back then as opposed to buying them during 2025. And the other book I had pre-ordered that came in was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Yeah, another book I knew 100% I was going to get, so I decided to pre-order it ahead of time. Okay, so now let's get into the general stats I have for my book buying habits in 2025. In total, the number of books I bought was 8, and my total spent so far is $75.79. Ideally, I would have only spent $60 in quarter 1. Obviously, 240 divided by 4 is 60, but I honestly don't feel bad about overspending here. Mostly because of the next stat that I have, which is the percentage of books I've read. Looking at all these books, I have read 6 out of 8 of them. A good chunk of these are books that I actually have read previously in like 2023 or earlier, and other ones were books I either was in the middle of or had recently finished that I knew I was going to want to add to my collection. And in terms of the books I haven't read, Gods and Monsters is very high up on my TBR. It's one of the books I want to read in 2025 anyway, and it's a part of a series that I'm already in the middle of that I want to continue sooner rather than later. The only book I would like truly consider an impulse buy is A Touch of Jen, since it's very much outside the normal type of book I usually read. I'm not much into like weird girl lit or like literary fiction in general, but this one does sound really interesting, and it's one I also can't get as an audiobook from my library. I could have obviously got a physical book from my library, but I figured it was one that since I found it for such a low price, I would take a chance on it and get it. And I did really want to read this in February, but just like other kind of things took precedence and I read them instead of this one. But it is a book I am still interested in and will definitely hold on to until I get the chance to try it out and see how I vibe with the writing style. Okay, now let's talk about kind of like my overall thoughts for how this has been going so far. I feel like overall I have been pretty good, even though I said I technically went over what it would have been ideal for me to spend in the first quarter. I definitely had the urge to like go shop for books, but I have like stopped myself pretty much every single time. I feel like a lot of that comes from the fact that I still am very much overwhelmed by the number of books I have on my physical TBR. And it's honestly gotten to the point where I also haven't checked out a lot of physical books from my library, because if I'm going to read it physically, I kind of want it to be a book that I already own, and I'm just instead using the library for audiobooks and ebooks. I've also really had the mentality of thinking I am only going to buy books that are part of series that I am actively working on, or I just want to buy copies of books that I have read and loved, but originally read as library books. So that's kind of my overall thoughts for how this year has been going so far. I wanted to leave off on by talking about some like personal predictions I have for my spending in quarter 2. On April 26th is National Indie Bookstore Day, which also just happens to coincide with a trip to New York City that we're going to be doing, where I already was planning on going to some bookstores and doing some damage then. I definitely mentioned this in my goals video. I've been really wanting to check out the Ripped Bodice in New York City, since I read a lot of romance books, and I just want to see what the vibe is like, and also check out how many like queer romance books they have, since that is something I feel like has been lacking the most when I look at indie bookstores in my area. So I'm kind of like roughly compiling a list of books that I'm hoping I can pick up if I see them when I'm out at any of those indie bookstores. Another thing that I have on my list is that the Iron Flame paperback is going to come out in May, and I literally added it to my calendar so I know to go to check out my local indie bookstore and get it. Really just excited to have that book. I can't wait to see what the additional like paperback special edition like bonus content is going to be for that one. So yeah, I definitely think in terms of my expenses for the next couple months, I'm going to be probably buying a couple new books during the time I'm going and checking out some new indie bookstores, which again, I'm not really that mad about. That's very much been on my goals to do in 2025. And I think I'll be able to like pull back a little bit later on in the year to make up for any of the purchases I have in this next quarter. So with that, we are now at the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this format. I'll probably do another update in another 3 months with my stats from quarter 2, so we can look at how my spending ended up going. But that's going to be it for me today. If you guys enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, or subscribing if you aren't already. Consider following me on the Storygraph if you'd like to see my reading updates in real time, as well as on my Bookstagram, which is linked in the description. And that is going to be it for me. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!